I'm back. Hi. Our first reader is an extraordinary human being. This man I have embarrassed up and down the line with my humor, calling him the Johnny Appleseed of the word. He has gone out of his way, certainly since I believe 1996, if not even before, from in utero, frankly. I'm sure he had a library there. But what he does in carrying the memory of those before us, through their birthdays, through their death days, reading their work, proliferating as many events as he could get his hands on to spread the power of the word, which is the single demonstration of democracy and eloquence and subjective viewpoint of an individual who chooses to try to write in the best they can without an attitude of comparison other than an educational standpoint of saying, you realize you could have changed that repeated word and done this possibly, or looking at the rhythm of this, have you looked at form and this and that, have you studied this person's work, as we stand on each other's shoulders. Robert MILBY, who was rightfully acknowledged as Orange County Poet Laureate, is a brilliant young man who I'm very proud to say is about to publish yet another tome, the Corona Etat 2000 poems, and there's going to be the 2021 collection as well. And guess what, boys and girls? There's going to be the 22 and the 23 and the 24, because I'm not a prophet of doom. This is called evolution. It's only going to get worse because it's evolution. But why are we now all of a sudden so susceptible? Maybe it's food compromise. Examine that rabbit hole. I'll just do something quick. When I was 17, fast food came. It was an adjective for delivery system. It blossomed into the food processing industry, which is now $1.7 trillion, with a T, trillion dollars, of which 70% of their product line has corn syrup fructose in it, which is a toxin. So if you know someone who wants some apple juice, especially a child, and you see it's got corn syrup fructose in it, give the kid a can of beer. It's going to do the same damage to the pancreas and the liver. That's just one example. But be that as it may, on the righteousness path and the power of the word, it gives me great pleasure to bring up Robert MILBY.
Thank you, Hayden. Thank you all for spending your Saturday afternoon in this most glorious, albeit haunted of buildings. I haven't been here in 16 months, and it's good to be back. There is one event that we can mention, but we'll leave that to Hayden. I gave him the flyer for the Village of Florida Spring Poetry Cafe, and you're all welcome. It's for the princely price of free. Everybody can come aboard. Hayden will tell you about that. All right, since this is National Insomnia Month, National Poetry Month, we have a few birthdays to go through and a few milestones. The 1st of April, we'll just stick with that. John Wilmot, UK poet, born in 1647. Now, if you have the interest, I recommend a film. It's not for the weak of, of stomachs. It's called The Libertine. I think that's Johnny Depp playing John Wilmot. Came out a few years ago. And he was born in 1647. He died at 33. I won't tell you what's of, you have to look it up. Edmond Rostand, born in France, obviously, in 1868. Cyrano de Bergerac, remember that? Gil Scott-Heron, one of our important jazz poets, born in America in 1949. And Sergei Rachmaninoff, born in a piano, we found him in there, 1873 in Russia. On the 2nd of April, Hans Christian Andersen, born in Denmark in 1805. Emile Zola, 1840, the great Émile Zola in France. Beat poet Anne Waldman, 1945, okay, here in America. The third being today, we have George Herbert, 1593. Now, he's either born in England or Ireland, but I don't remember. Washington Irving, born in 1783. You can go down to his house, Sunnyside. It was the first house in New York to have indoor plumbing, Washington Irving's house. And he also wrote poetry, among his great accomplishments. John Burroughs, the great naturalist and teacher. So since we're in Newburgh, right down 9W in what was called Buttermilk Falls, now Highland Falls, John Burroughs taught school there. So in the days when you could sit outside with your class, right? John Burroughs, 1837, then lived in Slabsides, a little cabin that he built up in West Park, which you can visit also. So we'll do poetry tours one of these days. I used to do that, take people literally all over the Hudson Valley. You know who lived there? You know who's planted there? All right. Daniel Hoffman, once a poet laureate in the United States, was born in 1923 on the 3rd, and today is the anniversary of the death of the great Johannes Brahms in 1897 at age 64. That's enough of that. All right. Oh, a few days ago, a great poet by the name of Adam Zagajewski from Poland died March 21st, 2021. He was in his 70s. This is from his collection Without End. Try to praise the mutilated world. Try to praise the mutilated world. Remember June's long days and wild strawberries, drops of wine, the dew, the nettles that methodically overgrew the abandoned homesteads of exiles. You must praise the mutilated world. You watched the stylish yachts and ships. One of them had a long trip ahead of it, while salty oblivion awaited others. You've seen the refugees heading nowhere. You've heard the executioners sing joyfully. You should praise the mutilated world. Remember the moments when we were together in a white room and the curtain fluttered. Return in thought to the concert where music flared. You gathered acorns in the park in autumn, and leaves eddied over the earth's scars. Praise the mutilated world, and the gray feather, a thrush lost, and the gentle light that strays and vanishes and returns. Adam Zagajewski. Oh yeah. All right. Since it is spring, this is one from my previous chapbook, Gothic Orange.
Hold it up to the camera.
I will. This is dedicated to Vincent van Gogh, or Van Gogh, however you want to pronounce his name. The field. Early spring field of robins, of starlings, white-tailed deer watching beneath April blue sobriety. Green peering through old brown grasses and blonde hay, parting a bouquet of skeletal leaves. Railroad tracks did not rouse the marsh in sleeping winter. Geese stand gingerly upon the cold steel bars, surveyed by red-tailed hawk from the bone of a telephone pole. Random piles of aged snow have birthed spring pools in this algid field and lonely mud. Ferns are conjured from cool shadows of a rock wall. They rise, mere fronds, to study sandstone fossils and artisan moss sweaters, comforting the boundary's shoulders. New grasses shiver in infancy as raw winds knit damp gray garments over the awakening pasture. Maiden daffodils converse in tiny stands. Their yellow heads tremble beneath these ominous clouds. This is soon to be released, Corona d'Etat, The Pandemic Poems, 2020. Just a few from this collection to assure my assassination. Waltzing at Bill Gates' crystal ball. For Rod Serling. No longer shall anything surprise us. Everyone's in on the virus. An early train ride on the Orient Express. Conspirators queue up from each cabin. What are the chances of losing your money? Low if you're a leader and you're in on the virus. What price? Psych triage, people gaslighting each other? In the US, like AIDS, this is HIPAA discreet. The bull now a bear, and some just vanish. The monsters are due on Maple Street. What happened to Greta and her global cook stove? The hours and days drift by us. We pay for our stockpiles, and most are compliant as everyone's in on the virus. All right. Now this guy is following me everywhere I go, and he's over 3,000 years old. The great Iceman. Even Otzi had a corona. The Iceman had a corona, COVID-19 BC version. He had Lyme, sores, consumption, bowel problems, and genital warts. He herded sheep and stepped in shit, breathed smoke and campfire emphysema. Otzi was sick from eating pork and curing beef, went vegan in snow before alpine meadows prepared his spring salads. He had no tribal medical insurance, for shamans worked overtime during lean winter months. He walked with an arrowhead stuck in his back. In his isolation, he used the dried herbs, made clothes, and ate the mushrooms his parents had the nerve to prepare for the coming warmth. Otzi wore the crown of survival, which makes our endless crying trivial. All right. And another one. I won't keep you here that long, don't worry. Full fathom 5 thy father lies, of his bones are coral made. Those are pearls that were his eyes, nothing of him that doth fade, but doth suffer a sea change into something rich and strange. Sea nymphs hourly ring his knell. Hark! Now I hear them ding dong bell. That's from The Tempest, Act 1, Scene 2. The ship. We must ratify the request to use reason. Think of the ship as a method of transport. No tales of the Titanic, but safe mooring in a tranquil harbor. While docked in thalassic quarantine, rumors of illness and war abound. Classic theater funded by the cloaked ruling class. Barkers and auctioneers remove masks in naked aggression and climb aboard as privateers. Think of the ship as metaphor for fate, where families huddle below deck, the captain seizes rations with soirees for his mates, stratify regrets as sad people sit beneath, dreaming of lifeboats and tropical shores, but begging for chains and padlocks on doors. The ships run aground on islands of plastic, excuses abound, crimes blamed on the masses, scurvy and weakness, treason against self. No one above keeps social distance, not even a lookout in the crow's nest visited by gulls. 6 feet apart or 6 feet below. Cemeteries and churchyards whisper old country truth. There are far less bodies in Davy Jones' locker, but the sea is vast and dark, and the captain is now a doctor. Laugh if you must. Who speaks for the children? Who speaks for the children with families in house arrest? Who watches coward parents in drunken states of undress? A country's daily routine suspended, countless mental roadblocks, endless shipwrecked egos drowned in a cove of id, battered by suspicious winds. Era of bankers' bailouts with buckets of taxpayers' earnings. Who becomes teacher to children with school staff locked away? Neither quake nor blizzard, but a corporate power play. For some, a secret misery, abused by dad and mom. Who defends the children from violence in the homes? Gagged and private family unrest, TV through the night. Who determines human worth with masks and gloves in sight? When summer blushes and school begins, who speaks for the children as shutdowns start again? I was never under quarantine. In the haze of selling their future, several generations have forgotten the banker's caste system. I neither bowed to worship money nor sang in corporate cages. I was not sick beyond disgust with modern sages, psychic jails and lockdowns, screwing planks in stages. There were times I was knocked down, but I was never under quarantine. State by state, the whiteout scent of cooking books without burning in a bonfire, a source of bankers' lies on tiny screens and glowing monitors. I never dressed in surgeon's drag, walking through the streets where people clapped for nurses' burqas or stared like dolts and preached. There are times when I'm knocked down, but I am never under quarantine. Without modesty, states stand in as teacher, mother, and father, techno-gods of a new order. I wandered field and forest, drove a city lane. Not once did cries of misery cause me barefaced shame. I never paid a jailer. I never bought the myths concocted by a dark regime in estates of cards and sticks. There were times when they knocked me down, but I was never under quarantine. Entire countries are not hospitals, nor landscapers' motor pools. Fearful counties darkened churches, ignored the children, and locked their schools, lectured in public by strangers whose intents remain the same as past regimes' deceptions and themes of costume dramas. We were never under quarantine unless we gave consent, masked and gloved cold penitents or domestic spies and dissidents.
Here, here.
Un más, por favor.
Dos, tres.
Gracias. Social disgracing. PPE, the last line of defense. I walk the driveway of the school. I enter the store for food. The ground strewn with latex gloves and surgical masks. Was it a convention of doctors, a coven of surgeons littering at every school and market parking lot? Was there a cadre of caregivers who'd simply decided to leave? Staff of ER nurses with herbal cures up their sleeves? Ghosts, gloves, masks tossed in a ditch, on a shrub, at the fence near the tennis courts. Urine in a spring water bottle left on the side of the road. No plastic portable toilets outside of the schools that are closed. The parking lot is a litter box, until recently was cleaned at discretion. But there are no OSHA mandates, no shields that can serve as a human repellent. When I gave up sleep professionally, I just started writing, and this is the heresy that was released into the wild. No lockdown for Yellow Jacket. I caught a Yellow Jacket in an empty coffee cup, covered it with a copy of a poem about arresting Bill Gates. He calls for eugenics as a means to cull people. Surely his servants spread poisons at his estate. I opened the door facing my front lawn and released the insect into a spring breeze. The wasp's house arrest over, Gates yet to begin. All right. Syllogism of the food chain. If they can get you to use the language, they can make you believe the lies. If they can make you believe the lies, they can get you to drink the fluoride. If you're willing to take their drugs and submit to quarantine, you'll continue to take their pills and follow the rules of regime. The older money still runs the circus and drafts the scripts for the dreams. If they can get you to take their drugs, they can get you to take their vaccines. If they can get you to use the language, they'll have you think there is shortage. You'll pay gouged prices for staples while food ends up in the garbage.
Right.
Preach.
All right. If you ask, do I have any hope? I do. Here's one more and then I'll stop. All right. This one is also for children. Liberation. Dim light at the end of the cavern, unfolding in the mists of spring, mist, stories of the lost, broken, fog-hidden urchins residing as freight, surviving in terror. Silence, then whispers in the night. At times, mourning could be heard upon the wind, shadowed wretches, abandoned dreams, quiet as a casket, afield and underfoot. The hives had existed for ages, unlocked doors, the rusty cages. Sages knew, but for pomp and ego did not act. Schools fallen off the tracks, parks closed after the fact. Now, beneath the veil of illness, inmates bound for rescue. Freedom above, breathing, walking, singing, all have a role in the tale of life restored. Who shall heal these daughters and sons, some born sub rosa, yet some yet to see the sun, emerging from endless charnel pits, hidden property of ghoulish men, each tale fit for nightmare studies. For even the city and village curfews, we walked and worked as shadows grew. Commercial traffic, a world beyond worlds, addicts swearing by a fountain of youth, spies watching for decades, and this year decided to strike. By mercy and comfort in cultural centers, parks, schools, and colleges, sunlight, course changes, an emergency and healing crisis. Thank you.